The New York Rangers season ended on Monday with a Game 7 loss to the Devils. So what is next for the Blueshirts? There were so many questions surrounding the Rangers, and I think New York Post NHL columnist Larry Brooks, I think he's got some answers. He joins me now. Larry, do you have the answers to all the questions before we get into them? I think you do.
No, sure. That's why I've been on the other phone with Jim Dolan discussing an executive position in the organization.
Hey, look, I'm just trying to help you out. Good luck with that. All right, so Larry, our colleague Jake Brown, he called this Rangers season a quote colossal failure. Maybe you don't want to use the word colossal here, but in your eyes, is this Rangers season a failure?
Colossal disappointment. It's not a colossal failure. They colossal failure would have been, I think, failing to reach the playoffs. But they failed to meet really any of their objectives. So in that sense, it was a failure. They took a step back from last season, not sideways, but back. And honestly, it's not so much that they were eliminated in the first round by a very good team. It's the fact that they were not competitive in games 5 and 7, being shut out both times in New Jersey in one-sided affairs, and coming up so flat in games 3 and 4 at the Garden after taking the 2-0 lead. They had the opportunity to step on the Devils' throats. They lacked the killer instinct, and they allowed New Jersey to get back in the series. So I think that's more, that's why there's so much unrest following this elimination. Again, New Jersey is an excellent team. They finished ahead of the Rangers in the regular season. They were in front of the Rangers all year from the first week of November. So again, it's not that they lost to New Jersey; it's the way they lost to New Jersey, which I think has raised some alarms about the makeup of the roster and where the organization goes from here.
Yeah, so let's get into those alarms and where the organization goes from here. Moving forward, do you expect any changes with the coaching staff or the front office? What do you think we could see there?
My answer that I can give you is it's up in the air, and the reason there is now 3 days after the elimination, the reason there is rampant speculation about Gerard Gallant's future is because the organization hasn't stopped it. The organization could put an end to speculation by signaling or putting out a statement that, of course, Gallant is coming back, but there's been no such signal given. There's been no statement of support. So it's going to be open-ended until we hear a declarative statement from the Ranger organization. As far as the roster is concerned, yes, I'm sure there will be turnover, but the Rangers are going to be operating in a very, very difficult under a very difficult cap scenario. They have very little space. They have a lot of players they still need they need a lot of spots they're going to need to fill. They have to deal with K'Andre Miller and Alexis Lafreniere's pending restricted free agency. There's a lot on Chris Drury's plate going into the offseason.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, Larry. And you just mentioned the roster, right? This will not be the same Rangers roster going forward. What changes to the roster do you expect the team to make this offseason?
I can't tell you personnel, but honestly, I look at this offseason and I understand the difficulty they're going to have overturning. They have veterans with no move clauses in their contracts. It's an older team at the top, up front. So I don't know exactly how they're going to navigate this, but I do know that they are, to me, they're looking at needing to make the same improvements they did last offseason, and that is to become a harder team to play against and a much harder edged team. There is just there's not enough diversity in their approach. They're a talent-oriented team, but it's not even talent-oriented. It's just, it permeates through the first three lines of their team. And I have suggested for a long time, and I'm certainly not the only one, that the Rangers need to have a matchup shutdown line that they can throw out and against a Jack Hughes, against a Nico Hischier, instead of expecting Mika Zibanejad to do it as a first line center, instead of leaning on the second line center to do it. We know, so that's what I have believed for years that the Rangers need, but it's very difficult to restructure this team with this roster, with the cap situation and with their no move clauses. So Chris Drury is going to have to be very creative.
Yeah, he's going to have to be very, very creative indeed. I want to talk to you about the goaltender, Igor Shesterkin. He's still one of the best goaltenders in the game, right? But he wasn't what we saw from him 2 seasons ago. Do you expect Shesterkin to return to his Vezina form next season?
Oh, listen, Shesterkin's performance in the playoffs, in the series against the Devils, was by leaps and bounds the best news to emanate from that series. He was at his best. I think it was his best playoff series. He reversed his form, reversed the results over the last, say, 3 weeks of the season. And he entered the playoffs on a high, and he maintained that superior level. So I think the Rangers go into next season without a care in the world in goal. They have got one of the best goaltenders. At breakup day on Wednesday, Shesterkin said, it's going to be a different Igor next season, and he talked about the difficulties he had. The pressure he put on himself in trying to duplicate last season's Vezina year, and it took him months to get by it. Now I think he's past that hurdle. Again, he had a spectacular playoff series. So I think the Rangers go in next year knowing they have one of the top 2-3 goaltenders in the NHL, which is not a bad place to start.
Not a bad place to start in a position they do not have to worry about at all. Okay, Larry, we've talked about a lot of the bad. Let's try to give the fans some hope here. What positives can you take away, or should fans take away, from this Ranger season?
Well, I think there was development from certainly Philip Hedl. There was development from Braden Schneider. Chris Kreider, his production dropped from 52 to 36, but if you're going to get 36 goals a year from Kreider, which I think you can count on as a baseline now because he has become so adept on the power play, so adept at being a net front presence. I think you're looking at 35. I think that what Kreider proved this year, even while going down in goals, was that the 52 wasn't a fluke. He could easily have scored 45 with a little more luck. Mika Zibanejad is one of the best regular season players in the NHL. He proved that again this year. But Capo Caco took strides. I think Jacob Trouba had a much better year this year. K'Andre Miller had a better year. I don't think he had a terrific first round, but he had a much better season. And the downside of that is going to be a little bit more difficult to sign him. It's going to be an interesting contract negotiation. But there are kids coming. That's what I would take away. But I think this ending has kind of left fans looking more at the, if you will, the half-empty cup than the half-full cup, because if it's half-empty, you don't have it, and it's now 29 years since the last one. So I think there's unrest among Ranger fans, and I don't. I understand that very well, having grown up as a Ranger fan myself.
Yeah, I would say a lot of the fan base you talk to is a lot of unrest, and the glass isn't half full for many. It's half empty, as you said, Larry. Yeah. That is the great Larry Brooks, NHL columnist for the New York Post. Larry, appreciate you breaking it down. We will see what the Rangers do this offseason. You answered some questions, but the team still has a lot of questions to answer as we move forward. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.